It's a rough story.
This is The Lonely Voice with Peter Orner from Texas Public Radio. I'm Yvette Benavides. On today's episode, we discuss two stories by Lucia Berlin, Panteón de Dolores and Emergency Room Notebook, 1977. Reading the stories of Lucia Berlin can be an intense experience. The pacing of each moves with suddenness, but then also lingers for brief moments of beauty and light, juxtaposed with something unseemly and sad. Characters want connection and love, and sometimes settle for something else that can lead to bad decisions, broken hearts, addiction. Generally acknowledged are the autobiographical details in Berlin's stories, the alcoholism and addiction, the humor, and the heartbreak. In the two stories we'll talk about in this episode, Panteón de Dolores and Emergency Room Notebook 1977, there's family dysfunction and tragedy, too, set against the backdrop of another country and its culture and rituals, or a hospital, again, with its protocols and routines. Except, within all that's sort of expected in these settings, there's something totally new to make us pay attention to situations and people to whom we might have never given a second thought. Lydia Davis has long championed the work of Lucia Berlin, noting her awe of the natural world, the suddenness in the prose, her pacing, dialogue, characterization, a romanticism that's cut off by realism. There are brutal elements in these stories, to be sure. Berlin is unflinching. She's also compassionate, depicting again and again the beauty that can coexist with human frailty, the tenderness that twins with toughness, and the fullness of life that can be measured in sudden, small moments. Both of these stories can be found in Berlin's A Manual for Cleaning Women. Here now, Peter Orner and I discuss two stories by Lucia Berlin, Panteón de Dolores and Emergency Room Notebook, 1977. She breaks so many rules. I mean, that goes without saying with Berlin, but she breaks them even more in this story, and it just is such a beautiful story.
I've been reading Moby Dick lately, and there's a chapter when the boat first gets underway where Ishmael has this huge argument with himself. I feel like I want to start this show with an argument that is not being made, but I want to fight against it. Do people make this argument? I think they do. The Berlin are they don't make the argument, but I want to make it. I want to fight. I don't know what I'm saying, except that I'm tired of hearing about Berlin's life in association with her stories. I think the Lydia Davis introduction is wonderful and terrific, and I'm incredibly thankful that Davis, among others, brought Berlin to far more readers, far, far, far more readers than she ever had in her lifetime. But this idea, and again, here I'm fighting a straw person, that her life, like a lot of people have interesting lives. You know what I mean? A lot of people have crazy ass lives, and she had a crazy ass life, but no one, very few people on ever have been able to do the kind of things she does with the short story. So here I go with extreme hyperbole, but I just like it, she was not transcribing her damn life. That's what I'm saying here. And no one is saying that, but I'm arguing against those people that are. Anyone out there who thinks that Lucia Berlin was transcribing her life is wrong.
You know, a lot of people transcribe their lives in their fiction.
Yeah, and I want to run the other way. Sorry.
Yeah, but not everybody does it to such effect, you know, so where you can just decide, man, this is such a great story. The lines are blurred, but I don't care about the lines. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, sorry, but my point is that she can't possibly have been transcribing her life. You know, that isn't what this is really. You know, I mean, you could say the same thing about Isaac Babel, right?
yeah.
Of course, they use real shit, but this is, it's like I don't know. It's do we say Picasso transcribed his life? Anyway, sorry. See, I'm arguing again with there's no one arguing with me.
I totally understand what you're saying. I just think if that's what you're carrying into the story, you will get nothing out of the reading. You will get nothing out of the reading except
Absolutely.
the bingos and the gotchas, and that must have happened. Or she really had a sister. Wow, look, she uses her own name in the story. I think you just need to enter the short story as a short story, and that's it. And take it for that. It is interesting in that introduction where Davis thought that she had written about an asparagus, that asparagus story, the wild asparagus story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was something that she had just described in a letter. I like that section of the introduction because it just shows me she was just a great writer. She was just a great observer and noticer, and she could find such poetry in those teeny tiny moments. And that's all that matters. Anyway,
Right, and I'm not knocking Davis's introduction, but I think that there is this sense of her as being this tragic figure, and I mean, I don't know, maybe it's because Melville's on my mind. It's like, like Melville was far more than a tragic figure. He was somebody who gave us these things that were invented, in some other cosmos that we have somebody like Lucia Berlin who lived a tough life, a hard life, saw a lot of stuff, but then was able, like any great writer, any few of the great writers we've had are able to transform that in a way that is very difficult to sort of track. And in this story, the way in which she talks about the death, the character talks about the death of her mother and the impending death of her sister at different times in different locations, and able to kind of create an entire like time scope. Is that a word? Of just movement in time. I just find it, but again, I feel like I'm in a hyperbolic morning.
I mean, it's easy to do that, I think, with these stories. I agree with you. Like, terrible things happen to all of us. It's not a contest, you know, but she is able to bring it to the fore in a beautiful way that makes us want to read it. You know, we don't always want to listen to people's woes and, have this sort of one-upmanship with
And
people.
and but I also think that she's willing to say shit that that most people, much less most writers, are never going to say,
That's
and
true.
and and somehow get away with. Let me can I read a part? And we should get back to the Day of the Dead, but she's
Yeah.
talking about her mother and how her mother hates Mexico. She hated smells, any smells, and Mexico smells even above the exhaust fumes. Onions and carnations, cilantro, piss, cinnamon, burning rubber, rum, tuberoses. The men smell in Mexico. The whole country smells of sex and soap. Now, I mean, come on, like
But look what
that
she
would get
did.
you into trouble in a creative writing class, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but look at what she did. She gives us the litany of the types of smells.
Yeah.
We're supposed to think it's all terrible because the mother hates the smells, and Mexico has smells, and
Right,
it's
and I should say, just to interrupt, sorry, but the mother is saying that the men smell in Mexico, and that's very clear in the context.
yeah,
Yeah,
the whole
sorry.
country smells of sex and soap. And then she says, because in this section of the story, she's directly addressing the mom. In this small section, that's what terrified you, Mama. You and old D.H. Lawrence, too. It's easy to get sex and death mixed up here, since they both keep pulsating away. A two-block stroll while sensuality is fraught with peril. Yes, it is the mom who makes those associations and hates Mexico and hates Mexican smells. But
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, I correct myself. It is the narrator saying that. There's no question. And the
yes,
narrator's a fictional entity, but
yes. And then
the
and
narrator is saying the men smell in Mexico.
yes. And
I
then
feel
when
like
the
I've been
when you
saying
put
this
it
for
through
years.
the Berlinometer machine,
Yeah.
it comes off kind of interesting. Like I'm not holding my nose.
And it's funny. And like you said, like that's what terrified you, Mama. And that shift into that direct address is just wonderful. And it happens earlier in the story, but there was especially great. But that's what terrified you, Mama. You and old D.H. Lawrence too. And I mean, I know that Lawrence spent time in Mexico. I did not know that he was terrified of the smells. And maybe it isn't even true, but it's hilarious nonetheless, somehow, because I can kind of see this, kind of earthy British guy, but still being a little bit wigged out by the smells.
She is funny. There's always like this kind of, I don't know, there's some, I mean, it's all so sad and some of it is lurid and some of it is tragic and and it's dark, as she says about herself, but it is also, there's something simmering underneath the surface for me that's always a little bit like a smile or something like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Almost a joy in the telling, you know?
yeah, yeah. Panteón de Dolores.
Yes.
So, pantheon of pain. Pantheon, we say pantheon is a cemetery. We use that word. We say pantheon for cemetery in Spanish. We say panteon.
Hmm.
And it's not called Heavenly Rest or Serene Valley. Pantheon of Pain is the name of the cemetery at Chapultepec Park. You can't get away from it in Mexico. Death, blood, pain. This is such an interesting idea about Mexico that, as you know, is very common. Lots of writers have written about Mexico being this space. I watched an interview with Guillermo del Toro the other day, he's a Mexican film director, and
Yeah.
he was talking about pain, about how he uses that and to create beautiful things. And so it's just a great idea about Mexico. But this was Berlin how many years ago talking about this too, and finding it in a place that we see in this fictional world, in this story, and how she connects the idea of Mexico, of the Panteón de Dolores, to her own immediate situation with her sister, to the immediate situation of the ofrenda for the mom, but also to not just memorializing her, but remembering her to the reader, right? Recalling all of these things. And there is horribleness and sadness in the things that she's telling and sharing, and it's so beautiful. This is the thing about Day of the Dead that I find so interesting in the story is that, the totally tragic sorrows nestled up against things that are of life and so beautiful. Again, not an original idea, but I just love how it blooms in the story.
Well, and it's also wonderfully expressed for those who might not know this in a non-condescending way. On the ofrendas, you place everything the dead person might be wishing for.
She is explaining it, yes, in a way that makes it so understandable and accessible to any reader, but it's poetry. So that's all I want to say about that.
Yeah, right? I mean, and yeah, it's boiled down and then tobacco, pictures of his family, mangoes, lottery tickets, tequila, postcards from Rome, swords and candles and coffee, skulls with friends' names on them, candy, skeletons to eat. And then so that's like the general, like that's what you do for a dead person.
Hmm.
You put on the things that they want. But he immediately shifts in the next paragraph. On our mother's ofrenda, my sister's children had put a dozen of Ku Klux Klan figures. And you're like, what the hell? Like, what? And then the next line. And it's just the concision, the kind of almost lack of her lack of transitioning sometimes is so great. I'm getting technical when it's just so cool anyway. But on our friends, a friend of my sister's children had put dozens of Ku Klux Klan figures. She hated them for being the children of a Mexican. Her ofrenda had Hershey bars, Jack Daniels, mystery books, and many, many dollar bills. She does not linger on it. She drops this bomb that they put Ku Klux. First of all, where do you get Ku Klux fan figures? You have to make them yourself, right?
Yeah.
And then she hated them for being the children of Mexican. And then it goes on to the other stuff. They also put Hershey bars because she liked Hershey bars and Jack Daniels, mystery books and money. They put many dollar bills. So it's just,
Yes, but read
the
the next part.
oh, sorry. Sleeping pills and guns and knives, and she was always killing herself. Right. I mean, I didn't even get to that. No noose, she said. She couldn't get the hang of it. So, I mean, that's it's I don't know, maybe that's the real yeah, thing that makes Berlin so unique is that the gallows humor that is almost constant, right? I mean, she often I think of her, certainly in the same league as somebody like Carver, but she's funnier. She's funnier. She's funnier than Monroe.
But it's so interesting. Even though we don't get to the part about I can't figure out why our mother hated Mexicans so much until later on in that page. When by the time you get there, I'm going back to reread about how she's explaining what the ofrenda is, and this is the mother's ofrenda, and what is the ultimate sort of jab at the mother is, but to build an ofrenda, something that is so used to be really so sort of uniquely Mexican. Not anymore, of course, but yeah, it's like the mother would not have wanted an ofrenda, because she hated Mexicans. So, but it doesn't matter because she's not there to complain about it.
And then she says she can't figure out why her mother hated Mexicans so much. I mean, well, beyond the given prejudice of all her Texas relatives, dirty lying, and then it goes on.
Yeah,
But the digs at Texas. I was thinking about Texas rereading the story this morning.
yeah.
Um,
In that next little bit about the ofrenda, she says, I am in Mexico now. This year we made a lovely ofrenda for my sister Sally, who is dying of cancer. And then juxtaposing this ofrenda with the other, we had masses of flowers, orange, magenta, purple, many white votive candles, statues of saints and angels, tiny guitars and Paris paperweights, Cancun and Portugal, Chile, all the places she had been, dozens and dozens of skulls with names and pictures of her children, of all of us who have loved her, a picture of Daddy in Idaho holding her as a baby, poems from the children who were her students. Such a life in that tiny paragraph. As you
yeah,
said, the concision, but this is just the altar, the ofrenda for the sister, and we learn so much in that tiny space. And it's so beautiful, compared to the mom's ofrenda. And they're both as meaningful. They're both equally meaningful in conveying what her relationship was with each woman, with each person.
I think that's what's so remarkable about the story is the fact that a reader might feel like that the comparisons were a little bit forced, but it doesn't, it seems so obvious to me that when she's in Mexico and her sister is dying, that would be that their entire childhood would be on their mind, of course. And what did she and who did her sister and her talk about is their mother and how much they generally didn't like her, just the way in which it moves back and forth in time and space between the two deaths, or at least the one impending death and the death.
Yeah. The way the point of view shifts. She's narrating at the beginning, sort of in third, then there's a space, and then, Mama, you weren't in the ofrenda for the sister. We didn't omit you on purpose. We have, in fact, been saying affectionate things about you these past months.
Yeah.
And then, when you read the story or reread it after a while, you don't even question the shift very much. You're sort of just in this swirl of her discussion of ofrendas and what they mean. And then suddenly, like you're in that swirl, and then you can kind of zoom in a little bit just to the mother. We didn't omit you on purpose. You are not included.
Right. And I mean, I think the only reason we notice the shift is we're trying to figure out how she did this, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And that's when I slow down. I'm like, wait a second. This story's, there's this movement between, where she is presently in Mexico while her sister is dying. And that is hard enough, right?
Yeah.
But I was trying to think, like, imagining, like, what would you do with your time, right? A lot of time, your sister would be asleep, you know, and you don't want to go far. So you're kind of in the next room while she's asleep. And I was thinking, what are you going to think about? What are you going to think about your childhood? you know?
Oh, yeah.
There's a seamlessness to it that is not intuitive, at least on the surface. You know what I mean? That isn't, she had to create this artfulness and then make it seem like it was completely seamless, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And the next thing is, for years when Sally and I got together, Mama, right, she's talking to the mom, addressing the mom who's not there. We ranted obsessively about how crazy and cruel you were. But these few months, well, I guess it is natural when one is dying to sort of sum up what has mattered, what has been beautiful. We have remembered your jokes and your way of looking, never missing a thing. You gave us that, looking, not listening, though. You'd give us maybe 5 minutes to tell you about something, and then you'd say, enough. Even that, even just that is a world, is a childhood, is the imprint of childhood.
Yeah. It's unvarnished, you know. When we talk about the dead too much, we obviously leave that stuff out, you know, and Berlin's not leaving anything out. I feel like the mother in the story is obvious, dimensional, to say the least.
Yes, and in the next part, she says, I can't figure out why our mother hated Mexicans so much. And then the same paragraph is another direct address. That's what terrified you, Mama, you and old D.H. Lawrence, too. So it's so interesting how she shifts in and out, which I think you just kind of do.
Yeah, she figures it out in real time right there.
Yeah.
You know, she's like, I can't understand. Oh, maybe I do understand
Yeah.
because I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's something, and then it goes on. I mean, we're only we haven't gotten past, we did a page and a half, you
Yeah.
know, and then, you know, later on, the next page, you know, Mama, you saw ugliness and evil everywhere, in everyone, in each place. Were you crazy or a seer? Either way, I can't bear to become like you. I am terrified. I am losing all sense of what is precious, true. And now I'm feeling like you, critical, nasty. What a dump. You hated places with the same passion you hated people. All the mining camps we lived in, the US, El Paso, your home, Chile, Peru. And so it's just the way she moves into. And again, I just imagine her sitting around, you know, this character and sitting around a place that she has now begun to criticize, just like her mother would have had she been there, Mexico City, you know, many, many years later. I don't know when the mother has passed away, but it seems like at least a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And then the movement into the Idaho section, I think, is extraordinary.
Yeah, it is.
One of the places they lived was Idaho. Anyway,
She hated it. It was a cliche of a small town. A one-room school, a soda fountain, a post office, a jail, a whorehouse, a church, a little lending library at the general store, Zane Grey and Agatha Christie. There was a town hall with meetings about blackouts and air raids. You'd rant about the ignorant, tacky Finns all the way home. We would stop for a Saturday evening post and a big Hershey bar before we climbed up the mountain to the mine, with Daddy holding our hands. Dark because the war just started and the windows in the town were blacked out, but the stars and snow were so bright we could see our way perfectly. At home, Daddy would read to you until you fell asleep. If it was a really good story, you would cry. Not because it was sad, just so lovely and everything else in the world was tawdry. I love that section.
it's amazing. I think it's the most sustained scene in this story. It comes a little bit later when they're still in Idaho and the father comes home and the mother and narrator have been playing this game with the cans and rolling, you know, having like rolling the cans in kind of a race with the
Yeah.
tomato soup cans and the and it's just it's a beautiful scene. Again, with somebody we have now already known is cruel and nasty and racist to the bone. And yet, here, let's race, you said. My canned corn against your peas. That's her. We were squatting there laughing, sailing cans down the room, crashing them into the others when Daddy came home. Stop that this instant. And then he's like, you know, he sends them both to their room. The mother's been drinking. He knows it. You know, that's how this family goes. But there's something about the beauty of that scene after we have already heard what a horrible person she is that somehow, you know, kind of illustrates to me what Berlin can do, which is humanize people after she has kicked them.
Yeah. And I don't want to oversimplify anything in this story, but we do learn that the mother had like these unfulfilled dreams.
Sure.
You sat in the dark smoking, sobbing with loneliness and boredom. My mama, Madame Bovary, you read plays. You wished you had been an actress. I think that just holds other wishes and other dreams, you know, and it's not just that she wanted to be an actress. It's just that there were these unfulfilled dreams. She's in this family. And besides that, there was this whole other issue with how her life turned out, that she can't reconcile. And the drinking is another element of this. And when he says, go to your room, I went, but he meant for you to go to your room too, exclamation mark. There's that exclamation mark Lydia Davis writes about. It didn't take long after that for me to see that when he sent you to your room, it was because you had been drinking. After that, for as long as I knew you, you were mostly in your room. And then she names all the places: Deer Lodge, Montana, Marion, Kentucky, Patagonia, Arizona. And because she was always drinking, she was always in her room. And then the space, and then Sally and I are in her bedroom now in Mexico. And we move out of that section about the mother. And we're sort of rattled. We're sort of trying to steady ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, and the story, I mean, it gets more surprising to me where she goes now,
Yeah.
which is even further into the past.
Yes.
While staying in Mexico.
Yes,
Um,
that's what I found so interesting, because at first it feels like, oh, the sister is dying. This is going to be a story about the sister, but it's not just that. And what the way she does the Panteón de Dolores, the pantheon of pain. The pantheon of pain is not just a cemetery, a graveyard in Mexico. It's a life. This recollection, it's our people, and and it has beautiful elements, and and it's a dark, terrible place too. So.
am I really just mad because Sally's dying? So get mad at a whole country? The toilet is broken now. They need to take out the entire floor. I miss the moon. I miss solitude. In Mexico, there's never not anyone else there. If you go into your room to read, somebody will notice you're by yourself and go keep you company. Sally is never alone. At night, I stay until I'm sure she's asleep. There is no guide to death, no one to tell you what to do, how it's going to be. And then again, surprisingly, it veers away from the sister again because I mean, and there are other stories about this
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
This one moves back at that moment when we're little. Our grandmother, Mammy, took over Sally's care. At night, Mama ate and drank and read mysteries in her room. Grandpa ate and drank and listened to the radio in his room. Actually, Mama was gone most nights. I mean, so it's just like completely and I hate that. I cannot stand that creative writing phrase like, oh, wait, this is an unreliable narrator. Caught him, unreliable narrator. This is, and I always say, and it's become almost a cliche, even in my own head, like, find me a reliable, I've said this on this podcast before, I'm sure, find me the reliable narrator, find me that person. Anyway, but here in real time, she's literally trying to figure this out, which is what people do. And
Yeah.
I think the ending of the story is,
But
among the best, but there's so many among the best of hers.
but I think the unreliable narrator is the one who either inadvertently or because of some other interesting reason will say something that isn't exactly right or true. And the reader recognizes it, that it's not exactly right or true, and it means something. Is the person lying? Is the person having trouble facing facts? Is the person misremembering? But I
Right.
think the unreliable narrator with her is just something else. I just like the way she does it.
Well, I mean, because she does it better,
Yeah,
and
she
like
does it in
the
more
idea of
interesting
like
ways.
interjecting unreliability in your narration is kind of that's not good writing to me. It's like I find the honesty of your character not knowing what the hell they're even saying or meaning is much more
Well, you just
true
said
to
it.
life than me.
You just
Huh?
said it. The honesty of admitting that you don't really remember in as part of the narration, as part of the characterization is
Yeah.
so good. If it's done well, and she does it well. I just trust this narrator so much. And it's hard to say why. When just to go back a little bit, where she's talking about the mother, one thing that made Mama the way she was, the mom is such a conundrum. I mean, she's such a mystery. She's such a question mark. And, it's wrong to try to just put your finger exactly on what makes a person turn out the way they do. Well, she always wanted to be an actress. She had all these unfulfilled dreams, and she had to live this way and that way and move to all these little towns in all these countries. But it's not just that. And then it seems like she's always trying to interrogate that idea. One thing that made Mama the way she was, and she says it in such a definite way, but who knows, that when she was little, their life was very easy and gracious. Her mother and father were from the best Texan families. Grandpa was a wealthy dentist. They had a beautiful home with servants, a nanny for Mama who spoiled her, as did 3 older brothers. Then, wham, bam, she got run over by a Western Union boy and was in the hospital almost a year. During that year, everything got worse. The depression, Grandpa's gambling, his drinking. She got out of the hospital to find her world changed. A shabby house down by the smelter, no car, no servants, no room of her own. Her mother, Mamie, working as Grandpa's nurse, no longer playing mahjong and bridge. Everything was grim and scary, probably, if Grandpa did to her what he did to both Sally and me. She never said anything about it, but he must have, since she hated him so much, would never let anybody touch her, not even shake hands. And even then, as we keep, careening through the story, it's just there. The narrator isn't pretending to have solved the mystery of who the mother really was or why she acted the way she did or did the things that she did, which of course impinge on the narrator and how the narrator turns out the way she does, or Sally. So.
Yeah, and I would just say about that section is it reads to me like, the lore, and maybe true lore, but the ways that families and people in real life compress and explain, and that's why I think for some reason it doesn't feel like an answer.
No, it doesn't feel like an answer. It feels like a sorrow. It's compassion or something. I'm not sure. When you're just trying to understand and not just write the person off as a complete and total disastrous mother.
Right.
It just comes off as, okay, I'm going to sort through this.
Yeah, but it doesn't mitigate anything, and it doesn't. I think you're right. I think that's what it is. It's just compassion and not a explanation or excuse. It just is what it is, and it's just allowed to be there, and it shifts away. The train neared El Paso as the sun came up. It was awesome to see the space, the wide open spaces. So, if there had been abuse in this family, in this fictional family, another fictional narrator might have worked with it in a different way, And I see her like putting it out there and then not using it as a hinge in the story itself or as the surprise plot twist in the story itself. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I'm trying to track what you're saying because I think you're right. I think it isn't, I think the compassion is the key, but it isn't getting this mother off the hook because there is no getting off the hook. The love is there,
Yeah.
So I don't know what I'm trying to say. I just think there's something so humane about it, like you say.
There's an acceptance. I mean, what are you going to do? She's gone. It's not an excuse. She's not absolving anybody of anything. Because as we know, as the story continues, there's yet more to reckon with or to learn about. But it's there as a, I mean, if nothing else, when you set up an ofrenda, it presents an opportunity for you to memorialize a person and the things that they liked and the things that they were about. But it also opens up, all of these boxes of memories, and inside, it's like the nesting dolls. There's another one and another one, and if you're going to open one, it is something of a Pandora's box. And that's what I like about this story is if she sets it up at the beginning with the idea of the ofrenda, and we are still standing there at the mother's ofrenda with the KKK figures and the knives and the guns and everything else that follows in the story. Like the story is the ofrenda.
And this is what I'm going to continue on my Lucia Berlin and Melville kick here. But like Melville, Berlin is willing to undercut all the pathos, you know, with comedy. And so the very end of all of this, I mean, we've had, you know, cruelty, allegations of sexual abuse, all kinds of horrific things associated with this person, racism. And then at the very end of the story, there's this scene where where the narrator has been under the porch and they're in Texas. When the father is away at war, and anyone listening to this is gonna be like, "What the hell are these people talking about?" You have to read this because it's so great. Just read it and love it like we're doing. But she reconnects with an old flame who they hang out together. They used to act in plays together, the mother and the old flame, while the father's away at the war. And they hang out and they reenact their lives of the plays they'd been in, the Glass Menagerie and stuff. Anyway, later on, towards the very end of the story, she gets slapped because she says one night after she got home, she came into the bedroom where I slept with her. She kept on drinking and crying and scribbling, literally scribbling in her diary. "Are you okay?" I finally asked her, and she slapped me. "I told you to stop saying okay." And she said she was sorry. She got mad at me. And then this. "It's that I hate living on Upson Street. All your daddy ever writes me about is his ship and not to call it a boat. And the only romance in my life is a midget lamp salesman." That's the old flame. I should have said that he was now a lamp salesman. There it is. There's the comedy. This sounds funny now. And she even acknowledges it. This sounds funny now. But it wasn't then when she was sobbing as if her heart would break. I patted her and she flinched. She hated to be touched. So I just watched her by the light of the street lamp through the window screen. Just watched her weep. She was totally alone, like my sister Sally is when she weeps that way. So there, I mean, it's this, I don't know, sense of closure that's so remarkable, but somehow, I don't know, somehow works, I guess. Somehow works as a sense of closure, which I never look for in a story, but I feel like I get it here.
Yeah. How she sort of draws the two stories together, which is not the point at all, but
No.
it's just part of the pantheon of pain. I mean, it's just part of the Panteón de Dolores is to bring the stories together. Because that's where it started. That's where this story started. Yeah. So to compare the mother, just watched her weep. When you cannot stop another person's cancer or alcoholism or fill in the blank, and you allow them to weep, she's had to do that for Sally. And because it's so, probably much fresher in her mind to have done that for Sally, she can remember that she did that for the mother. Just watched her weep. She was totally alone. The things you can never help, the things you can never resolve for another person, except just let them. She could never have changed her mother and her mother's behavior. Nobody can. Nobody can. Nobody could have altered the way things went. And, yeah, just like she couldn't alter the fate of Sally. So I just think the ending is so just right, because that is about all you can do sometimes. And this sounds funny now, but it wasn't then when she was sobbing. That line also it always gets me a little bit.
Yeah. But I mean, she, you don't want to call attention to your own comedy, but she's able to do that there by, because it is so genuinely funny
Yeah.
that it just, it's almost like the narrator had to say, wait a second, wait, I'm not quite done. I'm not quite done yet, and I don't know. I I think it's rare stuff. And, I wonder sometimes if, we talked about this with Dennis Johnson, where we've made the argument that people like him for the wrong reasons, and I hope that people don't turn to Berlin because of her own story of resurrection. I don't know why I keep thinking about Melville. I guess because he is on my mind a lot lately because I'm reading Moby Dick. But this idea, a lot of Melville's story has to do with his resurrection, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in a obviously a much different scale. Berlin is a story of a resurrection of an alcoholic writer who was not recognized in her time, et cetera, and then finally begins to get the attention she deserves. That I get that, but I feel like that's more marketing than actually reading the stories and realizing how great they are. Which again, the argument that Davis makes that argument too, and makes it well. Is how damn good these are, and how, of course, they were going to reemerge because of how good they are.
I like that you keep evoking the name of Melville, too, because of the thing that Davis writes about. I read this passage from So Long. She says that the shutters were
Yeah.
as old as Herman Melville. The shutters banged in the wind, shutters as old as Herman Melville.
And it does indicate to me that she was a fan. That's what that's what I hear there.
If you look at just that last page, one night after he had gone home, she came into the bedroom where I slept with her, drinking, crying, scribbling in her diary. "Are you okay?" I finally asked her, and she slapped me.
Yeah.
And she just keeps going on to the next thing. "I told you to stop saying okay."
Right.
Then she said she was sorry she got mad at me. And that's told indirectly. We don't get the mother's words there. It's that I hate living on Upson Street. So the mother's giving an excuse for why she is so frustrated and that she would slap her.
Yeah.
It's so horrible, and it's so real. And it's told with, like, I don't know if it's restraint or if it's just where Berlin is trying to put the camera, is trying to put the focus. I don't know, but it's there, and you can't deny that it happened and that it's part of the story, but she's focusing on the mother's loneliness.
Yeah.
It's such a good story.
Yeah, man. I think it's hard to do it justice, but I guess it's what we try and do. Should we do 10 minutes on emergency? Something about the emergency room story that, you could argue, well, there's no story here, right?
Yeah.
She called it Emergency Room Notebook, which kind of inoculates that, but it's just, it,
Yeah.
it, it's of course it's a story, and it is one that's just there. I mean, she's just there, and if you're doing this job and you're having all of these stories come at you daily, constantly. And that's what Niyar's like. If that's happening in one room, what's
Yeah.
happening in the next one, the next one, the next one. I mean, it's so obvious to say.
But what she does is, because you're sort of like, oh, the first time you encounter a story like this, emergency room, like, and the way it starts, you never hear sirens in the emergency room. The drivers turn them off on Webster Street. I love that. That is such an inside kind of detail.
Yeah.
And you read the title and you say a story about an emergency room. I don't know, 1977, and then you read that line and you're just going to keep reading.
Right.
Even though this first graph is sort of like, this is Ace Code 242-year-old male. I'm sort of like, okay, what else you got? And then you just go, then you get on the roller coaster and you're just in. And because of the way that she talks about the patients, not just in a super generic way, but in such a specific way, she's telling these stories. And it's and a lot of marginalized people, not all of them, but a lot of marginalized people, which is what you see in emergency rooms, of course. And she gives them life. She gives them personalities and names and meaning, which I find so beautiful.
But again, it's this like kind of honest humor that a lot of people might be afraid of, still, or even more so today for some reason, or maybe less so to, who knows. Code blues. Well, everybody loves code blues. That's when somebody dies. Their heart stops beating, they stop breathing. But the emergency room can and often does bring them back to life. Even if the patient is a tired 80-year-old, you can't help but get caught in the drama of resuscitation, if only for a while.
But then many lives, young, fruitful ones, are saved.
Yeah, yeah.
She does generalize a little bit, like gypsies are good deaths, you know.
Well, right. I mean, you can't say that. You can't say that.
You
You
can't
know,
say that, no, but she does. Good deaths seem to be coincidentally good codes. The patient responds miraculously to all this life-giving treatment and then just quietly passes away.
But can we go back to the gypsies
Yeah,
for a second?
yeah,
The best thing about gypsy deaths is they never make their kids keep quiet. It's my favorite line in the story. The adults wail and cry and sob, but all the children continue to run around playing and laughing without being told they should be sad or respectful. That's why gypsies are good deaths.
yeah. The part about Mr. Adderley on the 51 bus,
Yeah.
that
Oh,
people need to find this story and read it.
yeah.
I put her wedding band on his little finger. Over $1,000 in grimy cash had been in her bra, and I put it in his wallet. I told him that the denominations were 50s, 20s, and hundreds, and he would need to find somebody to sort it all out because he can't see.
Right.
And the idea that he was so afraid that he was crying,
Yeah.
it simply won't help the situation. Nothing will help. It's all I can do. Let me alone. Then I was just going to say, when I saw him later on a bus, he must have remembered my walk or smell. I didn't see him at all, just climbed on the bus and slumped into the nearest seat. He even got up from the front seat near the driver to sit by me. "Hello, Lucia," he said. He was very funny, describing his new messy roommate at the Hilltop House for the Blind. I couldn't imagine how he could know his roommate was messy. But then I could, and told him my Marx Brothers idea of two blind roommates, shaving cream on the spaghetti, slipping on spilled stufferoni, etc. We laughed and were silent, holding hands. From Pleasant Valley to Alcatraz Avenue, he cried softly. My tears were for my own loneliness, my own blindness.
I have a friend who wanted to make an anthology of train stories. I'm sure someone has done that. But how about an anthology of bus stories? And I'd put this in there.
You need to do an anthology of bus stories.
If their purses haven't already been stolen, old women never seem to have anything in them but bottom dentures, a 51 bus schedule, and an address book with no last names.
My God.
Right? That's just one freestanding paragraph that has nothing to do with, advancing whatever advancing there is in this story, which isn't much. This is just, her, the swirl around this life that this narrator is living as an emergency room nurse.
And then, when she starts the graph right above that, the first night I worked in emergency. And I really want to know, what was the first night like? An ACE ambulance brought in a Jane Doe. Staff was short that night, so the ambulance drivers and I undressed her, pulled the shredded pantyhose off of varicose veins, toenails curling like parrots. We unstuck her papers, not from her gray flesh-colored bra, but from her clammy breasts. A picture of a young man in a Marine uniform, George, 1944. 3 wet coupons for Purina cat chow, and a blurred red, white, and blue Medicare card. Her name was Jane Doherty. We tried the phone book. No Jane, no George. I mean, that was the first night.
Right.
Incredible details. And so real. Every single detail is not some weird hyperbolic embellishment, exaggeration for shock. It's so real.
Right.
Yeah.
She's never trying to shock, even when she shocks,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the repeat suicides that get to me. The 40 penicillin capsules, the 20 Valium, and a bottle of Dristan. I forgot about Dristan.
I know.
I am aware that statistically, people who threaten or attempt suicide eventually succeed. And then there's this line, I am convinced that this is always an accident. John, usually home by 5, had a flat tire and could not rescue his wife in time. I suspect a form of manslaughter sometimes, the husband or some other regular rescuer having at last finally tired of showing up just in the guilty nick of time. Just in the guilty nick of time. Where's Marvin? Must be worried sick. He's phoning. And then she goes back to the scene, which we sort of have lost track of. I read it a couple of times. I'm like, what just happened? But we're in this scene with I don't know, where's who's whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, where is there Marvin? Where'd he come from? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I hate to tell her. And then exam week at Cal, right? Exam week at Cal. Many suicides, some succeeding. Dumbest suicide of the week was Otis. Otis's wife, Lou Bertha, had left him for another man. Otis took 2 bottles of Sominex, but was wide awake. Peppy even. Get Lou Bertha before it's too late. Anyway, they try and reach her at the bar, and she doesn't want to come. She doesn't. He's got to do better than that. He has to do better. He has to make a better suicide attempt in order for her to actually leave the bar with her boyfriend. Anyway, it goes on from there. I mean, it's just, what do you say?
Yeah.
But you have to sometimes edit yourself when you're reading this out loud.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I edited myself twice.
I know.
Because there's stuff we can't say.
It's just from another time.
National Public Radio, right? I mean, and yeah, it's from another time, right? And we respect that we don't want to. But I think Berlin, if she was writing today, I'm not sure she would self-censor.
Yeah. It's interesting. A couple things are like the people that are in the ER that don't really need to be there. And let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The prostitute.
Yeah. And all day long, all night long, people come in because they don't have much appetite, have irregular BMs, stiff necks, red or green urine. It's just like, what are they really looking for by coming here? The other thing, too, is after that section that you just read, I try to sign as many patients as possible before the ambulances arrive. The people will just have to wait later. About half of them will leave. But meanwhile, all are restless and angry. Oh, hell, there were 3 here before this one, but better just sign her in. It's Marlene the migraine, an emergency habitué. She is so beautiful, young. She stops talking with 2 Laney College basketball players, one with an injured right knee, and stumbles to my desk to go into her act. Her howls are like Ornette Coleman in early Lonely Woman days. Mostly what she does is first bang her head against the wall near my desk, dump everything off my desk with a swoop. Then she starts her cries, whooping, anguished yelps, reminiscent of Mexican corridos, Texan love songs. The reason I read that is because when I reread this story, I go back and listen to Lonely Woman.
Yeah.
It's quite an effect. I mean, you could just sit there and listen to Lonely Women and weep and be in awe. But to put it in the background of this story is really something. Just saying. And I don't usually read with music on, but I do with this story. I just sort of say, all right, put on some Ornette Coleman. It's gorgeous on its own, of course, but and what she sets up though with Marlene is she sets up the way the story ends.
Right.
See you, Marlene, because she'll be back.
The ambulances arrive, and for sure they are emergencies. 2 die. This is a car accident. For an hour, all the nurses, doctors, on-call doctors, surgeons, everybody is tied up in room 6 with the 2 surviving young patients. And then, but she goes back to Marlene. One of Marlene's hands is struggling into a velvet coat sleeve. The other is applying magenta lipstick. Holy Christ, I can't hang around this joint all night, right? See ya, honey. See ya, Marlene. And so it's just the her sense of timing. I think maybe that's something to just point out of it. To be obvious, but she had, I mean, the timing, if you just study it in this story and any other, she knows when to end a sentence and a paragraph, and she knows when to end a story.
Yeah. The thing right before that, Marlene, she has slumped to the floor, and all I can see is an elegantly manicured hand extending her Medi-Cal card above the desk. Can't you see I'm dying? I'm going blind, for Christ's sakes. Come on, Marlene. How'd you get those false eyelashes on? Nasty whore. Marlene, sit up and sign in. Ambulances are coming, so you'll have to wait. Sit up. She sits up, starts to light a cool. Don't light that. Sign here. She signs, and Zev comes to put her into a room. Well, well, if it isn't our old angry pal Marlene. Don't you humor me, you dumb nurse. This hypochondriac or whatever is going on with this person that's such a regular.
It's not even explained even.
I know.
That's about it. She doesn't even have an ailment. Maybe she just needs a place to be for a while off the street. I think that's what's going on.
Lucia Berlin is the author of Panteón de Dolores and Emergency Room Notebook 1977. The stories can be found in the collection, A Manual for Cleaning Women. This has been The Lonely Voice with Peter Orner. Jacob Rosati composed our theme music. Dan Katz is Texas Public Radio's news director. I'm Yvette Benavides.